It turned the unexpected RPG series into a bona fide franchise, and left Japanese gamers waiting for 16 months to play the next sequel.
Yep.
American gamers didn't get to play it until last year.
So that's talking about Final Fantasy III. That's wacky. This is a really old video. I love it. No. So actually, Final Fantasy III was its own game. It was only released in North America as year 2007 or something like that. 2006, actually, I believe, on the Nintendo DS was the first instance, I believe, of us getting Final Fantasy III. Final Fantasy VI was called Final Fantasy III in North America. You are correct. Just like how Final Fantasy IV was Final Fantasy II in North America. A really messed up system.
Final Fantasy III was released in Japan on April 27, 1990, and was once again forged by the team that created the series. It began with an earthquake opening up a hidden cavern entrance on a floating island near the village of Ur.
Yes.
4 orphaned youngsters disguised as Onion Knights left their guardian in search of the altar cave. Within it, they discovered the Wind Crystal.
Yes. He's definitely going to mention this. This was the first game to introduce like being able to change your jobs as you play through it. A system that they later perfected, in my opinion, in Final Fantasy V, and unfortunately abandoned, more or less, after that.
The crystal bestowed upon them jobs, a Final Fantasy tradition. Instead of choosing one class or having the story do it for you, FF3 let you switch between multiple professions, including newcomers Archer, Scholar, Geomancer, Viking, Magic Knight, Bard, and Sage. All carried specific weapons and armor, and more were unlocked when each new crystal was found.
Yep.
Each job had its own special skill, and Final Fantasy III opened up a new space in your battle menu to include it. This gave thieves the ability to steal, and dragoons the opportunity to jump. But no matter the job, they all leveled up the same way, as the experience point system returned from the first game.
Oh no, the salamander! Maybe just a comparison. Final Fantasy III, I don't know how many jobs there would have been, or how many crystals, but based off of the NES limitations, I'm assuming there was only 4 crystals, so 4 sets of jobs you could get. Comparing it to Final Fantasy V, where if I'm not mistaken, you went to go find the 4 crystals, you observed their essences, and then you ended up going to a different world where you did something similar, as well as a couple of hidden jobs. I believe this is coming from memory, I don't remember exactly. And there was a lot more jobs in Final Fantasy V. Anyway.
They all leveled up the same way, as the experience point system returned from the first game. 2 of the more significant new jobs were Conjurer and Summoner. Both of them were able to bring forth magical beings for the first time in the series.
Yep.
These summons, like Odin, Ramu, Shiva, Ifrit, Titan, and Leviathan, could be purchased in stores or obtained by defeating the powerful creatures themselves.
Yep.
They played no role in the actual storyline, but their additional firepower was definitely welcome. Just as the second chapter introduced chocobos, the third forced you to meet Moogles, cute, fuzzy little bat-winged bear monsters that guarded the reclusive wizard Doga. The Moogle would become a series staple.
That's where they came from? I thought they came from Final Fantasy V. That was actually... No. Yes, 5. I thought 5 was the first appearance of them, but no. 3. Interesting.
Chapter introduced chocobos, the third forced you to meet Moogles, cute, fuzzy little bat-winged bear monsters that guarded the reclusive wizard Doga.
I love how he says, unlike, you know, how they introduced chocobos, we're forced to meet the Moogles.
Meet Moogles, cute, fuzzy little bat-winged bear monsters that guarded the reclusive wizard Doga. The Moogle would become a series staple, selling you magic, fighting alongside your party, and keeping your online house in order. To lighten up the early game's inventory limitations, 3 fed their bird runners a little too much grain and produced fat chocobos, plump creatures that could swallow items and transport heavy loads across the map.
Fat chocobos.
A submarine and several new types of airships were introduced in 3.
That's
including
cool.
The Nautilus, Enterprise, and the Invincible, a warship that could be explored like a castle, complete with shops and private quarters. Sid.
Okay, hold on a second.
Types of airships were in.
So I did not realize the submarine was a Final Fantasy III thing. That's pretty cool that the airship can basically just become a hub for everything. Because even in Final Fantasy VI, that was something that didn't happen. I might actually have to play through this. The difficulty spike was brutal, which is why I never finished it. But I actually like that as a system.
A submarine and several new types of airships were introduced in 3, including the Nautilus, Enterprise, and the Invincible, a warship that could be explored like a castle, complete with shops and private quarters. Sid helped you tour the skies once again, and even followed your party around for a while once you freed him from the ghost town of Kazis.
Right.
The forgetful warrior Desh hitched up with your crew after he gave you mini-magic, the ability to shrink your entire party and enter several mouse-sized areas. The story placed the 4 orphaned heroes in an eternal struggle between the forces of light and darkness.
Yep.
When one was disrupted, the other would call on 4 warriors to reset the fragile equilibrium.
Yep.
Ages ago, foolish mortals attempted to absorb the power of light, calling forth dark warriors to fight back. The Gulgans, a circle of blind prophets, predicted that one day the reverse would occur, and these light warriors would hopefully restore the balance for good.
Yeah, so fun fact, that's actually like the central plot point of Final Fantasy XIV. Is that, well, at least the last expansion, bad things happen when one side gets too powerful or not. So there's warriors of light and warriors of darkness. And the light, as much as people think it's the good side, sometimes the light being more powerful is just as bad. What did I just get a ping for? I don't know. Anyway, let's continue.
These events came to pass thanks to a spiteful mage named Zand, a pupil of the wizard Noah, and a sentient being called the Cloud of Darkness,
Oh.
a hive mind of evil that aimed to tip the world off kilter while an unstoppable void consumed it. Final Fantasy III was unfortunately shadowed by the release of 6 in America 4 years later.
Right.
The 6th installment was renamed 3 as it was the 3rd Final Fantasy released in the US.
Right.
This almost erased all knowledge in the States of the 3rd Famicom game, and meant we wouldn't get our hands on it until it was ported to the Nintendo DS 16 years later.
Right. I actually have less to speak on for this game, because I actually haven't played it. Similar to the next couple, I've only played a couple times, so it'll be more of me just kind of being like, oh yeah, that's cool, instead of actually having something to say about it.
The 3rd Final Fantasy was a huge adventure, definitely the biggest RPG Square had made so far. It brought the most successful elements of the first 2 games together, and helped build a growing curiosity as the series would soon have to move ahead a generation. But before it made the jump, it met another proud landmark in its 20-year history. On July 12, 1990, 2 months after Final Fantasy III came out in Japan, the original Fantasy was released on the Nintendo Entertainment System in America.
Nice.
And a legion of English-speaking gamers boarded an airship ride into the future of role-playing.